All right, guys, we're going to start here. Wednesday edition of the show. Looking forward to connecting with you guys through the I Love CVille network. A lot we're going to cover, including some topics we didn't get to yesterday. We broke the news about Raising Cane's to the UVA Corner. By now, you know the Raising Cane's to the UVA Corner story we did on I Love CVille. I don't know, I want to say a little over 80,000 unique IP addresses on the story. So we'll talk about that today. We'll give you an update. I have heard from an insider, let's call it a real estate insider, with an update of a larger or a fourth entity that has a large stake in UVA Corner ownership. We'll talk about that on the show. Boyd Tinsley has some properties that are at auction. I mean, I think they're fantastic deals. I'm going to showcase the properties today on the show. I'm going to ask you the question, is this a real estate opportunity, the Boyd Tinsley properties? And I'm going to ask this question, and it's a tough one. Will we see stop and frisk from security at downtown mall establishments before individuals are allowed to enter the establishments? This used to happen. In fact, Rapture's done this many times where a security guard will pat you down before allowing you entrance into Rapture. Are we going to start seeing that stop and frisk from private security before individuals are allowed to enter bars after 10 o'clock in downtown Charlottesville? All those topics and more on the Wednesday edition of the I Love CVille show. Give the show a like and a share. We're going to get started in about 15 seconds or so. All right, Judah, we can start when you're ready. Guys, good Wednesday afternoon. I'm Jerry Miller. Welcome to the I Love CVille show. Thank you kindly for joining us. It's great to connect with you guys through the I Love CVille network, a network that brings you long-form content so you, the viewer and listener, can learn about what's going on in the community. That's the essence of the network. Learn what's happening in our community. The show is called the I Love CVille show, but really the show is a showcase or a deep dive on anything Central Virginia related. We take topics that are macro topics and micro topics, and we relate them to the community we live in. We love living here. I'm going to go with today's talk show with an approach of asking you, the viewer and listener, to participate in the discussion with comments in the comment section. I have a handful of topics that I want to relay to you that I think are pretty darn good. Those topics are as follows. By now you know, after hearing yesterday's show and reading ilovecville.com yesterday, that Raising Cane's is in a permitting period when it comes to opening a business on the UVA corner. Raising Cane's has over 600 locations. So we'll kind of dot the I's and cross the T's on the Raising Cane's story now that we have even more information. After yesterday's show, I heard from a community stakeholder. And this community stakeholder is a real estate investor, a real estate holder. And this community stakeholder asked me respectfully to highlight a fourth large property owner on the UVA corner. I'm going to relay to you, the viewer and listener, who that fourth large property owner is and the holdings for that fourth large property owner on the UVA corner. We're also going to chat on today's show the Boyd Tinsley property. We touched on this briefly yesterday. Boyd Tinsley's pretty impressive estate is now at auction. I'm going to highlight the estate, showcase photos of the estate, and I'm going to ask you guys this question. Is this a good real estate opportunity? Frankly speaking, I see tremendous upside and potential with Boyd Tinsley's estate. We're going to also highlight on today's show something that we see coming down the pipeline. Will the response from, restaurant and bar owners in downtown Charlottesville be stop and frisk customers before they walk in the doors, especially after hours, especially after 10 o'clock? What does that mean? Well, here's what it means. After 10 p.m., will we see private security hired to stop, frisk, pat down customers before they are allowed inside the bar, the music venue, the restaurant, and the epicenter of Charlottesville, the 8 blocks we call the downtown mall? We have seen this before. After back-to-back weekends of shootings, will we see it again? I'm going to highlight that topic on today's show. And I also want to talk about the Seville Tomorrow article, Charlottesville Tomorrow, the nonprofit news website that talked about public bathrooms on the downtown mall. Seville Tomorrow and its staff interviewed individuals around downtown Charlottesville about the public restrooms. I'd like to offer some perspective from that article. Perhaps you missed it. I read it. I'd like to highlight clips, excerpts from that article to you, the viewer and the listener. If we could, go to a 2-shot, Judah, and make sure that mic is turned on. And we'll welcome Judah B. Whitcower to the program, the jack of all trades, the director of the show, and an opinion we value. First, good afternoon. It's good to see you, Judah. We've missed you over the last few busy days of the I Love Seville show. How are you?
I'm all right.
I want to talk about Raising Cane's to the UVA corner. We broke some news yesterday. You helped certainly from a back-end standpoint of getting that news out to the community. It's been retweeted by a lot of accounts, shared on social media quite considerably. Raising Cane's to the UVA corner. Here are a couple things that came to mind for me that I want to talk about with you. I'm surprised that Chick-fil-A didn't try to get a steak on the UVA corner. Chick-fil-A is the fried chicken behemoth, the white elephant. And while they're at Barracks Road now, UVA corner I think is a completely different market and not competition for its Barracks Road store. So initially, I was surprised that it was Raising Cane's that was taking over the sheet spot and not Chick-fil-A. Other things that came to mind, I think we're going to start seeing other businesses follow suit. When you have Chipotle and Raising Cane's and Starbucks on the UVA corner, it starts opening up the doors for other big box brands, other chains, to consider the UVA corner as a place for a location. So I would not be surprised if we see another 1 or 2 chains coming to the UVA corner in the near future.
Does it also make it more expensive?
What do you mean?
Well, Raising Cane's is a big brand, big box brand. They're certainly have more money available than your local whatever. So if
your local business owner.
So if Raising Cane's gets in there, is that going to embolden the owners of the downtown spaces, saying, "Hey, we can get X from Raising Cane's. Why are we catering to local Charlottesville owners?"
I think that's Judah Whitcower gets props for that comment. I think that's going to happen. This is what I think is going to happen. I think what you said is 100% going to happen. That was very well said. I think what else is going to happen is the competitors or like-minded businesses, folks in that QSR, quick serve category, that fast food category, that big box brand category, are going to say Starbucks, Raising Cane's, Chipotle is replacing College Inn. Raising Cane's is going where the Greenskeeper and 3 and Post Public House used to be. Starbucks has been there for a while. They're going to start saying, we need a footprint there. And these footprints are extremely valuable. Why they are valuable is as much about making money as it is about shaping the consumer habits of the next wealthy generation of patrons. UVA students are smart. They're going to come out of college with great jobs, with fantastic earning potential. Not only does the UVA Corner cater to undergraduates, first years, second years, third years, fourth years, but it also caters to Darden students who are pursuing a master's in business, law students, medical students. This is the next generation of wealthy consumers. So having a footprint on the UVA Corner is as much about making money in real time as it is about infiltrating their brand and their message and their service and their product to the next layer of people that are going to have disposable income. And I think you made a fantastic point, my friend. I think when the Corner gets infiltrated by Chipotle, Raising Cane's, and Starbucks, other corner landlords will want similar value propositions. I've been told, in fact, I think Joey Rifkin, when you were on vacation, Joey Rifkin filled in for you, did a great job. He said this, his dad was the owner of College Inn, and College Inn didn't stay open. One of the reasons College Inn did not stay open was the rent, maybe the quality of the building, the condition of the building. He highlighted a walk-in freezer that was extremely expensive to repair. Chipotle has invested over $1 million.
Yeah, they've got the cash.
They got the cash
they want
into rehabbing the building. So if you're Tip Top Terry and you own the College Inn space, and you have a business that is cash rich, that is willing to put $1 million into rehabbing your building that you own, plus paying you astronomical rent, it's hard for them to turn that down.
Yeah.
So Judah's a smart man. To your point, maybe this is the new, what do we call it, a comp? The market being set? I mean, what's going through your brain over there?
I mean, what's going through my brain is, what does this mean for? I mean, you know, UVA is never gonna lack for new students, but
For wealthy students.
But it does. I guess it doesn't matter. But it seems a shame that the next generation of UVA students are not going to be. They're not going to be telling stories about going to the corner and
What I did yesterday.
Yeah, they're not going to. Their stories. Nobody's going to go into later life telling, you know, fun stories about how they visited Chick-fil-A.
Right. And why is that? Because they can do it at home. They
Because
can do it at anywhere.
because there's nothing unique about it.
Right.
So
And
when
that's
so when
the
you're
point of the
when you're
franchise.
talking about having fun at Greenskeeper or, you know, Orbitz, there's something, you know, there's something special about that, because those places are unique to UVA in the Corner. What happens when the Corner is just a strip chain, you know, with all big brands, and it's no longer anything unique, and people telling stories about UVA just mention the Corner in passing because there's nothing special about it.
Well said. Are the stories of the University of Virginia in 5 years from now? Hell, are the stories from the University of Virginia and the Corner 2 years from now going to be like this? Man, Judah, remember when we had that peach milkshake and those waffle fries? Or
Yeah.
we had those tacos from Chipotle, and they didn't stuff the tacos with enough chicken and sides because Chipotle is very tight when they're stuffing those tacos? Or is it going to be like, man, Judah, remember when we had those Raising Cane strips and we dipped it into that Raising Cane
Yeah.
sauce?
Remember all those late nights at Raising Cane's?
Right. No story is ever going to start like that.
Right.
Because if the story was going to start like that, people would immediately
And be like, oh, okay, whatever. Yeah. Why are you?
ignore you.
Why are you talking about Raising Cane's? Nobody
Yeah.
cares. There's a Raising Cane's every 5 miles now.
Exactly, 600 plus locations. What's the collateral damage? Besides the social experience and the quality of life being negatively impacted, what is the collateral damage to Charlottesville, do you think?
Well, I mean, we still have local stores there for the time being. But how long does that last? And how long before local entrepreneurs stop trying to start something on the corner?
That's what I'm worried about.
Or at barracks.
That's
or
what I'm worried about.
Because it's just too expensive.
That's what I'm worried about.
I mean, it's the same thing with workers not being able to afford to live here.
Same thing as what?
As workers, people who would like to work in Charlottesville and can't afford to live here. Now you've got entrepreneurs that would love to start a business here but can't afford any of the spaces.
Our friend Judah Wickower is a smart man. That's what I'm worried about. I'm worried about the apathy. I'm worried about apathy setting in, or I think apathy is the best word, an unwillingness to try or start something because the stigma or the reality is the price is so expensive, Judah.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like that's happening in a lot of sectors, in a lot of places.
Give me an example. Tell me what you mean by that.
I mean, it's happening. Well, it's happening in a lot of sectors. We constantly talk about housing affordability. We constantly talk about moving across the mountains to Waynesboro or somewhere else is a fairly attractive option until gas gets up to $5.
Where it's now.
$5 a gallon.
I mean, call it now. Now's expensive.
Yeah.
I put $20 into my Explorer and I'm like filling up 2 days later.
So that's one sector where it may be getting too, it's too expensive to live in Charlottesville. Whether you're trying to buy a home or rent a home, everybody is trying to get as much as they possibly can. That's going to make it harder and harder for people to move here or even move close. Then you've got places like all of our shopping areas, Stonefield, Barracks, the corner. What happens when locals get priced out of there? And I said it's happening all over the place because this is not
It's not unique to Charlottesville.
Yeah, it's happening all
You're on
across
point to
the United States. And do we really want an Amazon on every corner? Do we really want everybody to be working Amazon fulfillment centers? Because that's the only job. I mean, is this going to become company towns where you're paid just enough to keep your life going wherever it is, and the rest goes back into the company store? It's scary to me that nobody seems to care.
I think people care, but I think they realize it's the invisible hand of capitalism and nothing can be done. I mean, what could be done?
But that's disingenuous, isn't it? The
What could be
invisible
done?
hand of capitalism?
How's that disingenuous?
Well, there are people involved in all of these situations, whether they are home sellers, whether they are home owners who rent out their homes, whether they are property owners who own the spaces that the businesses go into. There is a person involved, or at least there used to be.
There's still people involved. The majority is people involed.
I know, but
You're on point right
I
now.
read an article recently about rent setting.
It was an algorithm that
Yeah.
was setting the rents.
But it's
I read that same article.
But it's a program,
Yeah.
and a lot of companies are using it now. So what happens when that program starts setting rent higher and higher and higher, and everybody else, even the people that aren't using this program, aren't using this algorithm, they're looking around and they're seeing the price,
Comps,
and they're saying
comps.
I'm not gonna go lower than the market. So do they just follow the trend up until there's nothing left? Nobody to rent except big businesses. Nothing left to no homes.
And not small businesses or locally owned.
Yeah, no homes left to sell. You just rent them all out to people, and they can't afford to live in them, but you've got to live somewhere. So, I mean, are we doing this to ourselves and just everybody looking around saying it's not my problem?
Judah Wickower, cheers to Judah. Devil's advocate, sake of a talk show. I think you've been on fire today. Why don't I get some news out? So there's a fourth very large UVA corner property owner. Why don't you go to a one shot, and then we'll go back to you. We can leave the mics hot, both of them. That way, look at the screen, guys. That way you can see the stories we're going to cover. I'm going to go right back to you here, J-Dubs, because you're on point. There's 4 large property owners on the UVA corner. I've often said there's 3. There's a 4th. The 4th is R.E. Lee. Yes, R.E. Lee. They own, and I mean, let's Google them right now. I'm Googling them. I'll give you the website. Let's see here. I mean, you Google them. lee-bc.com. Let's see, R.E. Lee, they own Bodo's. They own the convenience store next to Bodo's. And by owning Bodo's, I mean the building, not the business. R.E. Lee owns the building that Bodo's is in, the convenience store next to Bodo's, the 14th Street parking garage. What's that? Yeah. I would imagine there was some rebranding done there. I would imagine that rebranding, I'm not going to go down that road. Lee Building Company. They own the Bodo's real estate, the location that Bodo's is in, not the business, but the real estate. They own the convenience store building that is next to Bodo's. They own the 14th Street parking garage, the stores behind or below the 14th Street parking garage. They own the strip mall on 14th Street, Roots, Asado, the convenience store next to the Graduate. So you got a conglomerate, locally owned conglomerate, that owns a large chunk of the UVA corner. So moving forward, I will say 4 entities own a large chunk of the UVA corner. You have Hunter Craig, Tip Top Terry, Litza, I'm going to get your last name right. Litza Lambrinos. Did I get that right, Litza? Litza Lambrinos. Did I get it right? And R.E. Lee. Four entities owning much of the corner. So let's go back to the 2-shot. Of those 4, the smallest is undoubtedly Litza. She owns a building on the UVA corner, one building. This is the question I ask you, and you and I often have, it's like the bull and bear on the show. The municipality, Charlottesville, is making it so expensive to own real estate in town. And this is coming from someone who owns real estate in city. You know I do. You help me manage it. It's the Macklin building, right? If the city is making it so difficult from a cost prohibitive standpoint to own the real estate, can we truly fault the local property owners from pursuing the Chipotles and the Raising Cane's and the Starbucks for the corner? It's like this chicken and the egg scenario.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, and you're right. You can't fault them for wanting like the way you explained, a company that's willing to put money into your building to make it better, and they're also likely going to be a long-term renter,
Right,
who's
10-year leases.
never going to have an issue,
With collection.
yeah, paying their rent. So it's not a bad, you can't fault them, but at some point you've got to say, okay, well, somebody has to stand up for what we want, and if that's what we want, then okay, that's fine. But at some point,
But where does it start? Like Sarah Hill Buchensky, SHB, you make the program better. Sarah Hill Buchensky makes the program and our shows better. She's A+. She's a realtor, she's a mom, she's invested in the community, she's a community stakeholder, she's just a good person. Mm-hmm. She says, could cutting red tape, regulations, government interference help the small business owner, the entrepreneur, the small builder? Only the deep pockets can compete right now. Those are chains and big boxes. She makes a good point. Neil Williamson taught me this, and Neil Williamson has a comment in the feed as well. Neil Williamson is the president of the Free Enterprise Forum. I love Neil Williamson. If I'm around Neil Williamson, I'm often learning and laughing. I learn and laugh when I'm with Neil. Neil's the kind of guy, and Neil, I would, I feel this way about you, where I would like to belly up to a bar or to Well Hung Vineyards with him and just have like a cold drink.
no doubt.
Neil says, for what it's worth, R.E. Lee is a significant employer of skilled labor. I played racquetball for years with, let me see if I can get his exact title. I played racquetball with the CEO of R.E. Lee for years. The president, the CEO. I'll just use his first name. His first name is Dean. Dean, fantastic racquetball player, great guy. He's a certified public accountant. He's a shot caller at R.E. Lee, which is a big-time company in the area, as Neil has indicated. And as I've learned after yesterday's show, R.E. Lee owns the Bodo's building, the convenience store next to Bodo's, that building, the 14th Street parking garage, the stores below it, the strip mall on 14th Street, Roots, Asado, the convenience store next to the Graduate. I mean, good God, this is a heavy hitter. Heavy hitter. So here's where I'm going with this. I learned from Neil Williamson of the Free Enterprise Forum that a $400,000 house that's new construction in Albemarle County, 24% of that construction is tied to paperwork and red tape and bureaucratic mumbo jumbo. $100,000, Judah, is tied to paperwork and annoyance.
Yeah.
Licensing, permitting, as opposed to granite and appliances and bricks and sticks and foundations and roofs and drywall. So to Sarah's point, if we made it easier for small business owners to actualize their dreams by limiting bureaucratic mumbo jumbo, yes, that would be advantageous for the small business owner. The unfortunate nature of this, real estate is the primary driver of revenue for jurisdictions. The folks that lead municipalities, councils, supervisors, mayors, and city staff, they know one institutional way of keeping a business afloat, and that's by collecting revenue on rooftops. So until someone enters a position of leadership that's willing to offer a new or radical or fresh or novel perspective on how to drive revenue, and I think really it's economic development, we're going to continue gentrifying the community. And the really unfortunate aspect of this is there's many kinds of gentrification. There's gentrification of neighborhoods where retirees and folks on the financial margin get pushed out.
Yeah.
There's also gentrification of businesses.
Mm-hmm.
And we're literally seeing a shopping and dining and retail district, the UVA corner, being gentrified. And one of the reasons they're being gentrified, this corridor is being gentrified, is because the few owners of the shopping, dining, and retail district are getting the death of 1,000 cuts. Property taxes, real estate tax rate, floating debt. I'm not saying any of them have floating debt, but anyone that has a mortgage tied to prime, and many commercial ones are, they're getting hammered.
Yeah.
So they can't help but go to the big box brands. So I don't think the fault necessarily falls on the landlord. Maybe you disagree with me. Maybe you say, well, that's because you're a landlord yourself, Jerry. I wouldn't be surprised if you say that. I mean, anywhere you want to go on this topic.
I don't think they're at fault. I'm not, pointing fingers at any particular one of them. And I'm not saying that they should be doing, it's certainly not up to me how somebody, how somebody runs their rental space. And you're right. There are costs that they have to think about. But once it starts,
snowballing?
Yeah, once it starts snowballing, when does it end? If they're each just looking at price per square foot, when does it just eventually run out of the realm of
impossible for the local owner?
Yeah. And that's not necessarily that's not necessarily anyone's fault, but again,
that's the invisible hand of capitalism.
The problem is everybody wants to point at the invisible hand of capitalism, and I don't mean everybody, but the point still stands that
it's okay if you include me in that.
I'm not pointing fingers. I'm just saying if everybody's saying it's not my fault, then okay, great. Well, how do you find a solution when everybody insists they're not the problem?
Vanessa Parkhill's got a solution. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
She says there's an alternative to economic development. She's the queen of Earlysville. What do you think her alternative is?
You're asking me what I think she's planning, what her idea is?
She says smaller government. Smaller government means less overhead on the government, means less reason to
overtax.
I mean, it's such a nuanced topic. This topic is such a great conversation topic for a cocktail party.
Yeah.
Like, you got the people that own the corner that are like, I'm getting hammered by local government. You got local government that's saying, I'm getting hammered by capitalism, by rising rates, by labor shortages, and by taxpayers who want some more.
Right, and that's part of the problem is that yes, you could shrink government, but what about all the things that we want? What about all the things that we say that the school should be doing, and this department and that department should be doing, and you can't have it both ways. You can't have big government that gives you everything that you want, but have it be small enough that they're not, taxing you dry.
Now let's look at the small business owner. And this is a topic I want to bring up on the show. I was going to save this for later in the show, but it's worth bringing up now. You have two significant shootings in city of Charlottesville, right? You got the Omni Hotel parking lot OK Corral from 2 weekends ago at 5 o'clock in the middle of the daylight.
Yeah.
And then you got this past weekend shooting, which is even more concerning, when a man walks into a bar without facial covering and murders somebody.
Yeah.
And doesn't even give a rat's what that people witnessed who he was.
Right.
He still killed somebody. I mean, that really even now gives me goosebumps. That's just like, how do you characterize that?
Brazen.
Brazen murder?
Yeah, it's just brazen. The guy.
Didn't care if people knew he killed someone and still did it.
Yeah, well, I don't know anything about anybody involved in this, but I gotta figure that, the kind of person that would do something like that doesn't care about who knows who he is. And I think a lot of us are so inundated with TV and cop shows, we think that it's just a simple, they've got his face, everybody's seen him. It's it's a simple 1, 2, 3, and he's behind bars. But obviously it doesn't actually work that way.
Well,
there's
perfect
still
example is this.
to be done to find the guy.
The Charlottesville police knows what he looks like.
But that doesn't mean anything.
Well,
do
I'm
they know
just
his?
saying,
Do they know his name? Do they know where he lives?
I don't know those things.
Right. So the
I know
point
they
is,
know what he looks like.
The point is that doesn't just knowing what we think in terms of all these
Judah, your
movies.
dog got jumped this past Friday. Why don't we tell that story and how you reacted? Liza, the I Love Seaville mascot, you were walking with Liza, which is arguably, and I have dogs myself, Judah's dog is better than my dog's. Judah is the best dog in the world, a rescue from Caring for Creatures in Fluvanna.
Yeah.
She is like a Rhodesian Ridgeback pit bull mix. What else do you think is in there?
She's a lab pit mix with something like maybe hound.
The
or
Widow's
something.
Peak shows me Rhodesian Ridgeback.
I've never seen a Rhodesian Ridgeback with a Widow's Peak though.
All right,
they
let's
just
go
have
with-
that same coloring.
We'll go lab and pit bull. You know your
it's
dog.
Just a lab pit mix with some kind of hound, I think.
How would you characterize her demeanor? Sweetheart.
Yeah, she's laid back.
She's kind.
She doesn't start things, definitely.
Our son comes into the studio and like hugs Liza, and Liza just like loves it and takes it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason that that pits used to be called nanny dogs.
She's a sweet dog.
Yeah.
Judah on Friday was walking Liza
Yeah. Just
by
left
the park,
Just left the park, walking by the.
Market Street Park.
Yep, walking by the library, and lady had a German Shepherd up on the hill.
Of the park.
No, up on the hill in front of the library.
Okay.
There's that hill like just to the left of the stairway up to the front doors, and probably 5 or 6 feet away on the sidewalk, and the dog just made a break for it, tore the leash out of the woman's hand, and started attacking Liza. Liza turned to take the attack, and gave as good as she got. But at some point, it was all just flashing teeth and fur to me. I was trying to get my foot in there to kick the other dog, and by that point the lady had come down, grabbed the leash, pulled the dog away. I pulled Liza in the other direction, asking her if she's okay. She seems fine, but I get her sitting down. I'm running my hands over her, and she's got a gash in her leg.
Here's my point.
Yeah.
My point is this. Our friend Lee, and I'll leave it at Lee, our friend Lee,
He was there.
he was there, he saw it, and he happened to video.
After the fact.
After the fact, he videoed the German Shepherd and the German Shepherd's owner.
Yeah.
I learned about this soon thereafter. I'm very proactive. And I wanted to, the scruff on the back of my neck rose. Because you're my boy, you're my family, and Liza's the best dog ever. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to let's figure this out. And long story short, we both realized after looking at Liza, you certainly, that Liza had a couple of scrapes, and while it was a dog attack, it could have been a lot worse.
Yeah.
And I said, Judah, here's my point. And remember, I said this.
I know what your point is.
I said, Judah, did you get the name and phone number of the person who's the owner of this German Shepherd? And you said, no, I did not. And I said, what the hell? if you have to take this dog to the vet, Liza, this person that owns this German Shepherd should pay the bill of the vet. She goes, don't worry. Judah said, don't worry. If I have to take the dog to the vet, I will post her photo on social media.
I've got the video.
And you have a video. And Charlottesville will identify who this person is. The point of what I'm bringing this up, and you already get the point.
Yeah, is that somebody should be able to identify the guy.
The murderer went into a bar and went down the downtown mall hunting another man. His face is on multiple cameras. They should be able to identify this man by using crowdsourcing tactics, similar crowdsourcing tactics that the illustrious and esteemed Judah B. Witkower would have done
Swears by.
for Liza.
But
that's my point.
Okay, but this was also an older woman with a dog who's obviously she's not moving around. She's not, she lives in one place. She probably has lived in one place for years and years and years. Whoever was involved in the shooting on the mall, I doubt they're a homeowner who.
That's an assumption.
It is an assumption.
That's an assumption.
But I would say it's a fair assumption.
That's an assumption. Would I say it's a fair assumption? I'll give you that. I'm not going to be a nitpicker here. Yes, that's a fair assumption.
Even if
I think there's probably some kind of, maybe we should choose our words carefully. There's probably some kind of deductive reasoning we can utilize, or some kind of key performance indicator. Homeowners may or may not, probably not, be going into public bars and murdering people in front of other witnesses.
Yeah, I mean, whether or not that's true, it's but still, the point is that while it may be easy to find out the person's name using the methods we're talking about, that still doesn't guarantee that you're going to be able to find the person. So yes, you may be able to crowdsource
The identity of the murderer.
The identity of the guy, but that doesn't guarantee the police are going to be able to find him, especially if this guy was willing to go into a place and kill someone. I have to think that he's probably got places that he can hide in.
I think that's fair.
Holes
That's fair reasoning.
that he can fall back on.
I think that's fair reasoning. I would imagine he's on the lam right now.
No doubt.
I would doubt he's hiding in Charlottesville.
Probably not.
Right?
I mean, that's speculation. I have no idea. He could have friends that he can stay at here and outside of Charlottesville. We don't know.
We'll take it a step further. And we were just having this conversation before the show started. Here's another interesting aspect of the story.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe this is called, I'll get to that point in a second. The reason these two particular shootings have more notoriety with the community, more awareness within the community, is because of the location and how the shootings were done.
Yeah, they're getting closer to areas that we think of as safe.
Exactly. And on Monday, I called the downtown mall Mayberry, where you walk on the downtown mall and you see Mayberry. You see what we would think is the safest place in the world. A place where there's no sin or crime. However you look at Mayberry, right? The reality is, over the last 2 weekends, do we think that they're connected? The police is telling us they are not. But the last 2 weekends, there's been an OK Corral gunfight in the shadows of a $400 a night hotel. And the following weekend, there was what's it called? There was an assassination style murder in a bar before last call. Yep. With witnesses everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
With a perpetrator, a murderer, who didn't give a rat's ass about his identity being hidden.
Right.
So the community, Judah and Jerry included, are taken aback. We're angered. We're furious. We're perplexed. We're flummoxed. We're demoralized, disgusted, disturbed. I like the alliteration. You know I do.
I know.
Judah's like, I hear this alliteration constantly, especially with these. Not everybody does. I know you certainly do. We're pissed off, right? We're pissed off. We're worried. We're worried.
I would
Here's
say
the point.
I would say the emotions probably run the gamut. There are probably some people that are worried. There are some people that are teed off. There are probably some people that are terrified and wondering.
And there's probably some people that say this is an isolated incident. It's not going to affect me at all. It's everything.
Yeah.
But this is the point. The point is, do you know why we as a community are most running this gamut of emotions? Why?
I'm not sure what you're asking.
The reason we're experiencing this outrage and these emotions is because it happened on the downtown mall.
Yeah.
And it shows what I think is maybe systematic or subconscious racism, that if this happened in pockets of the community where violence like this has been otherwise compartmentalized too, maybe we're not even talking about this.
Right.
Certainly not to the extent we are. But the fact that it happened in Mayberry, 8 blocks of tomfoolery and music and fine dining and socialization, the 8 blocks that's the water cooler of locality, the fact that it happened there makes the scruff on the back of your neck rise. And that, whether you will want to admit it or not, is systematic or subconscious. You disagree?
No.
Racism. Whether someone wants to admit it or not.
I think that may be part of it. I think there's also a certain amount of maybe building tension. When
what does that mean?
It means that when the guy was shot at the park over by Cherry.
You're talking in Tonsler Park.
Yeah.
You're talking about during the Tonsler League, the basketball league.
Yeah. When he was shot, I think there was a little of what you're talking about. There was, that was over by Cherry. I think people were a little bit worried, but they were less worried because it was an area where they perhaps had some expectation that that kind of thing would be more likely to happen there than somewhere around here. I think we've been hearing a lot about gunshots, not necessarily shootings, but gunshots in the last few weeks and months, and I've been seeing some questions on the Charlottesville subreddit asking what's going on with all the shootings. And so I think with these rather more visual, not visual,
tangible.
These last couple shootings that have been much more in the public eye,
present, obvious, palpable,
have been much more in the public eye. Have been, like I said, going from a shooting,
pockets of isolation.
Yeah, going from a shooting over by Cherry to hearing about shootings fairly regularly to having a couple big ones here. I think there's been some, like I said, escalation from what people were hearing about and used to hearing about to now the downtown mall. So yes, there is a little bit of what you were talking about, but I think there's also a bit of, okay, what is going on? This was isolated incidents for a while, but now it's getting, now it's spreading, becoming almost a common occurrence. I think that is as much at the forefront of people's minds as where it's happening.
Does the location matter for murder? That's a layer that
it's a good question.
That's a layer of the onion that we have to discuss. Does the location of murder matter when it comes to influencing community outrage and outreach? How's that for succinct?
It definitely does.
I'll say it again, viewers and listeners. Does the location matter for murder when it comes to influencing community outrage and outreach? If this murder, this assassination, had happened not on the downtown mall, but instead had happened in pockets of the city that historically violence takes place within, would we be talking about it on the I Love Cville show, or following it on social media, or watching Hawes Spencer write about it in the Daily Progress, Dan Schutte discuss it on CBS 19, or Steve Rappaport and Casey Hott chat about it on NBC 29? That, whether we want to admit it or not, is subconscious, systematic racism. And I'm not one to dog whistle systematic racism.
Systemic.
Systemic. Don't both work there? Systematic works there.
Maybe.
You don't think systematic works there? I think systematic works there. You check definition of systemic. I'll do systematic, okay? And then I'm going to hold my thought here. Systematic. I'm going to definition systematic. Done or acting according to a fixed plan or system. Methodical. A systematic search of the whole city. I think that works there.
Systematic means methodical or intentional, while systemic means throughout the whole system. So I think what you're talking about
They're
is...
synonyms.
Systemic and systematic are both related to the word system. But
Yeah, it's the same root word.
But they have different meanings.
All right. Well, we'll agree to disagree. I think both work.
Systematic,
Both work as adjectives in that scenario.
Systematic means you're intentionally being racist. Systemic means that it's like under the surface, and what you're talking about seems to be more like systemic, where we're acting on it not because we're being methodically or intentionally racist, but because it's under the surface, and we're just you know what I'm saying?
Okay, for the sake, all right, I'm going to heed to Judah here. Judah's very intelligent. Systemic, I'll heed to you, okay? For the sake, thank you. Appreciate that.
I think systematic would be more like what happened with Vinegar Hill, where they systematically, destroyed that neighborhood.
They razed the neighborhood.
Systemic is more, it's like
subconscious.
I said. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. It's something that exists, and we're not always aware of it because it's just part of our everyday lives.
Fantastic. Corrected. Thank you. Judah Wickower, folks. Give him some props there for that. Systemic. I'll go with systemic. Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. Is this systemic racism?
Yeah, in a way. I mean, it's something that you can't really get away from.
I mean, if this happened on, I'm not even going to identify pockets.
I mean, there was just a murder the other day. This is from yesterday. Police are charging an Albemarle County woman with
That was Stony Point. That was a domestic. That was in Albemarle County.
Still a murder.
That was Albemarle County domestic. It was a domestic issue. Stony Point Road, a woman killed someone in her family, a domestic issue. I mean, I guess my point is this. Here's my point. So many layers to this story, man. So many layers. I mean, you could do a case study on this in Brad Wilcox' sociology class at the University of Virginia. Friend of the program, Brad Wilcox. The fact that it happened on the mall means we talk about it. Because when it happens on the mall, it can happen arguably anywhere.
Yeah.
When it's isolated to certain pockets or compartments of the city, you, me, people, we perceive protection
Yeah, you
because
can
it's
stay
not
away-
happening in our stomping grounds.
You can stay away from that area. You
Yeah.
can, yeah.
Right. But when it
Imagine
happens
yourself
on the mall, you can't stay away from it
Right.
because the mall is the water cooler of Charlottesville.
Okay.
It's the every place of Charlottesville. It's the most popular place of Charlottesville. That's where it happened.
Yeah.
Here's another layer to consider. Is a byproduct of this murder, is the collateral damage of this murder now stop and frisk with private security at doors of private businesses? How many folks have gone to Rapture sometime in their life, and as they've entered Rapture on a Friday or Saturday night, they don't do this all the time. Mike and Cecilia run a phenomenal restaurant. Mike and Cece, they run a fantastic restaurant, fantastic nightlife, fantastic music scene, fantastic club, fantastic bar scene. Love Rapture. I love what Mike and Cece do. I sincerely mean that. I love what they do. But I've been to Rapture many times where when I've gone in after 10 p.m., there's been a security, private security, hired security that check your ID, pat you down. Is the collateral damage of this murder more private security and doorways of private businesses patting people down? And will that private security, here's another byproduct of it, start racially profiling customers that come in? Customers that fit a doorman or private security personnel stigma of trouble. Does that private security start extending to clothing like bandanas and do-rags and hats and baggy shirts? Because all those criteria have been employed by private businesses in the past as means to let someone in or not let someone into their private business.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think
That's another freaking new layer here.
Yeah, I don't think this was. So when I was 12, I don't think this was the reason my family moved. But my mom was. I was going to be going to junior high from elementary school, and she called the school that I'd be going to and asked if there was a dress code, and they said the only dress code is no gang colors. So what do you do when you have to start stopping people at the door of your local late night restaurant and tell
That's
them,
what I'm saying.
sorry, you can't come in. No gang colors.
We've seen businesses, and I'm not going to name them. I'm not going to blow up anybody's spot, but we've seen private business already say no baggy shirts, no hats, no baseball hats, no caps,
Yeah.
no do-rags, no sunglasses, no gang colors. And what's the byproduct of that? What is the byproduct of entry mechanisms like that? You know what the byproduct is? A more homogeneous clientele. A clientele that can meet the standards of private doormen. And the standards that are met by private doormen, maybe it's Brooks Brothers button-down, tucked-in shirts, or cashmere jackets, pocket squares. Maybe it's, Vineyard Vines
Yeah.
and Polo and Tommy Hilfiger. Right?
Yeah. And now we're back to gentrification.
And now we're back to the gentrification of customers. Do you see what's happening in this community? We're seeing the gentrification of real estate, home ownership, by the increase of real estate tax rates. We're seeing the gentrification of commercial tenants, the types of businesses that can afford to work and hold a business in a community. The UVA corners being gentrified because the rents are escalating. The rents are escalating because local government is taxing the bejeebus out of the property owners. So they're having to rent to Chipotle's and Starbucks and Raising Cane's as opposed to George, the previous owner of the Greenskeeper, as opposed to Stu, the previous owner of the College Inn. Now we're seeing the gentrification of customers, where potentially private business, because of safety concerns, are going to have to hire private security. And private security is not cheap. Hiring private security is even more cumbersome for the private business to stay in operation.
Yeah.
So now the private business that is fresh from COVID, that took a second loan on their house to just stay in business,
Yeah.
to keep their doors open, is having to deal with an additional layer of overhead, and that's hiring private security guards. And now these private security guards are the gatekeepers. They're the people that get to determine whether or not someone goes into an establishment. And these private security guards are human. And human nature is to read a book by its cover. And when you read a book by its cover, what are you deciphering? What are you analyzing? What are you studying? You're studying clothing. You're studying head coverings and hats. You're patting people down. You know what that's called? What's that called?
Profiling.
That's called profiling. It's called profiling. And these are the type of uncomfortable conversations that we have on the I Love CVille show in long form content. Because you know why? Because we care of the community. You are literally going to see the gentrification of downtown Charlottesville from a customer standpoint. You'll see the gentrification of Charlottesville in totality from a real estate home ownership standpoint. You'll see the gentrification of Charlottesville in totality from who can operate a business standpoint. And before you know it, the University of Virginia student who comes to Charlottesville 10 years from now is going to go to a corner that looks like every effing corner in America, wearing clothes that looks like a white, rich area.
I think everybody already has a view of what Chads on the corner look like.
Maybe.
Khaki shorts,
button downs,
pastel,
vineyard vines, popped up collars, pastels.
We've all seen it.
Aviators hanging on from some croquis around someone's neck, maybe with some rainbow sandals. Pinkies up.
That's exactly it.
Pinkies up, Judah. Pinkies up. It's, guys, and to Judah's point, this is systemic, not systematic, systemic racism.
Some of it is.
What do you mean? Who's going to say this? Who's going to say this Friday night? Who's going to say this Friday night? Come to our bar in downtown Charlottesville. We're not going to pat you down. You can wear whatever you want. We're going to let as many people in as possible. We're going to play whatever we want from a music standpoint. We're not going to worry about the last 2 weekends at all. It's not going to change how we run our business. Who's going to say that? There's not a damn person in Charlottesville that's going to say that.
Not all of them are going to be able to afford doormen.
No. Here's another byproduct that could happen. You ready for this? Another byproduct that could happen from this is exactly what Judah said. They're not going to be able to afford doormen. So maybe they close early. Because they don't want to deal with after midnight.
Some places have already been doing it. I mean,
no doubt about it.
Not just.
And here's a byproduct of that.
Not just staying open late, but some places are only opening for lunch now.
You don't want to know the byproduct of that? Which part of the mall would you say is the sketchiest part of the mall?
I'd say the part over by the Omni, strangely enough. Well, actually,
the sketchiest part of the mall, except for the last 2 weekends, has been the pavilion side of the mall.
Yeah.
The pavilion side of the mall has been the sketchiest side of the mall for what reasons?
Because of the homeless.
Because no businesses are open on that side of the mall.
Yeah.
There's very little light because no businesses are open. There's very little customer activity on that side of the mall. Why? Because there's no businesses open. And because there's no light, because there's no businesses open, because there's no customers, because there's no businesses open, there's what? Excuse me.
It's been a while since I've been down that way, but it used to be that right there at the Welcome Center entrance,
It's still the case.
there
Keep carrying the show as I
there
catch my
were
breath.
the sleeping bags, and I think
That's still happening.
all of the belongings of at least three or four people, and you'd often either see them sitting there or sleeping there, or around the area.
Neil Williamson, are you saying, Jerry, the portion of the downtown mall, and I feel 100%, I'm 100% healthy. This is just a byproduct of me using my voice 3 hours a day, nonstop, without taking a break. Neil Williamson says this. Neil, it's a good comment from you. He's saying, is the portion of the downtown mall, is that what you're saying, Jerry? The one that's closest to the Charlottesville Police Department, the least safe? That's exactly what I'm saying.
Now,
The portion of downtown Charlottesville that is the least safe. Viewers and listeners, I've had this conversation with my wife numerous times. If you walk from, say, Belmont to the downtown mall and you cut through the pavilion, it's touch and go.
to be fair, I've never felt threatened.
I have. My
Well-
wife has. I certainly have.
Okay, I'm not saying I'm everyone, and I'm not. It's been
I mean,
a very,
let's cut to the chase.
and it's also
you
been
have bulging muscles, and you're a strapping guy that's very physically imposing. So if
What?
anyone saw you walking down the pavilion and onto the downtown mall, they would be scared, you know what, from Judah Wickower.
sure.
Can you stand up and flex for the viewers and listeners?
No,
Okay, all right.
here.
Oh
Look
my
at that.
gosh, ladies.
Look at those
This
guns.
is a single man right there. Flex again. Dude, you're exploding out of that Oxford, out of that
Nah.
cardigan over there.
That's okay.
Finish your thought. I kid because I care.
I also haven't been. I also don't come that way late at night. And the last times I was actively going in that direction were when I would. I guess there were times when I would go that way in the dark,
You also
heading
don't stay in the
back to my
downtown mall
car.
at night.
What?
You also don't patronize the downtown mall at night.
I know, but I used
When's
to
the
walk.
last time you've done that?
I used to walk by that way to get to my car back when you could park underneath a bridge.
But that was at 7:30, 7 o'clock.
Yeah,
I'm
and
talking about after 10, after midnight.
okay, but in the winter,
Here's another
it gets
example.
dark early.
Here's another example. There's legitimately been a human being. The preferred nomenclature is houseless. It's not homeless anymore, it's houseless.
Yeah,
That's what I've been told, it's houseless.
two words that mean the exact same thing.
Why is homeless not the preferred nomenclature anymore?
Because somebody wants to signal. What do they call it?
Virtue signal?
Yeah, somebody wants to virtue signal that they know the right word for it.
But what is the difference between homeless and houseless?
There isn't. I mean,
I
somebody
know there's a- but
somebody
why
will
is it
argue.
preferred houseless now?
I mean, somebody will argue that they just need a house. That they're not like bad people.
What's the difference between a house and a home?
Virtue signaling?
All right.
I don't know.
I mean, why is it houseless individual now instead of homeless? Is what I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. Anyway,
It's
we're off track here.
yeah.
Next to Citizen Burger Bar. I love Citizen Burger Bar. The steakhouse burger at Citizen Burger Bar, the one with the onion straws, is one of my favorite burgers of all time. My two favorite burgers in Charlottesville and in Central Virginia are the Riverside Burger, bacon cheeseburger with some grilled onions and some mustard and some pickles, or the steakhouse burger from Citizen Burger Bar. If you've been to Citizen Burger Bar over the course of the last year, you have noticed there is a houseless individual, houseless, not homeless, that is living next to Citizen Burger Bar. and has lived in the same spot for over a year. I see this person during the day. It's gotten to the point where I'm on the nod and acknowledgement as I walk by standpoint.
Does he have wavy hair? Blonde?
Let someone walk by and see him.
What?
We'll let somebody walk by and see him.
I'm just asking because I think I know who you're talking about, but I'm not sure.
There's an individual
Okay.
that lives next to Citizen Burger Bar. Houseless. Here's the next question I have for you. Should, over the course of a year, a houseless individual be able to claim a piece of public property as his personal domain for residence?
For what purpose?
I almost used a cuss word.
You're
I
saying
love-
that you're
This
saying
man lives there. He lives there.
this is my spot?
Yeah.
Or okay.
That's what he's done.
I wondered if I didn't know if there was anything else that you thought that
He's
should
claimed a
go
spot
along
of
with
city
them.
property as his spot and has essentially eminent domained it. And it said, this is where I'm going to live. Should that be allowed?
I don't know. I don't know who's allowing it.
What do you mean?
Oh,
What do
who's-
you mean?
I mean, who's giving him the authority? Yes, you can say nobody wants to go
The
kick him
lack
off.
of the lack of action gives him the authority. The lack of action from the city gives him the authority.
But that's not actual authority.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not.
If I break the law, but there's no one around to enforce the law, am I really breaking the law?
Yes.
If a tree falls in the woods and no one's around to hear the tree, did the tree fall in the woods?
Yeah. Sorry, but
Over the course of a year, a man has claimed a piece of property as his house, as his home.
okay, but he doesn't have any actual authority to
Dude,
do that.
his
There-
dirty undies are there. His dirty underwear. I don't want to
my
go.
point still
I don't want to go
stands.
to that 10 that's 10 square foot area. The tidy whities have track marks. They're stinky.
Yeah, I don't either.
Do you want to go there?
I don't either. But the point still
The
stands. He's
BVDs
got
scare me.
the point
They're
still
smelly.
stands that he has no authority to that space.
Stinky BVDs are pretty authoritative.
In fact, they recently evicted a woman who lived over.
I remember.
What do you mean you remember?
Keep going. I know what you're talking about.
There's a woman that was living right there on the side street next to Soul Food Kitchen.
Yes.
And across from Fleury, and she had a lot of stuff there. She had like 2 or 3 full like little bays. I don't know what they call those. Spots on the wall filled with her stuff, and I saw the cops talking to her, and the next time I went by there, she was gone. So they do occasionally evict people from their whatever you want to call them, claimed spots. What did you say?
Their domiciles?
His
Are they?
Now she's got
The guy next to Citizen Burger Bar has been there a year.
now she's got most of her stuff on the park.
I would
And
call that a domicile if you've lived in one place for over a year.
I don't think she was there that long, but maybe this guy was. So yeah.
No,
Well,
I'm not exaggerating.
I know.
Like, I am not exaggerating.
I know. You're saying the guy needs his own post office box.
Give the guy a mailbox. Let him take some mail. How about a hard line for a little Netflix? Maybe you get him a
Yeah.
little running water so he's not.
An outlet so he can plug in his phone.
I mean, so my point is this. And it's 1:46. Evidently, the Boyd Tinsley news with Boyd Tinsley and his property going to auction is gonna be saved till tomorrow. I'll put a story out on iloveseville.com later today about Boyd Tinsley, former band member, Dave Matthews Band, his personal residence and much of his estate. In fact, I think it's all of his estate is now at auction. I'll share that information on iloveseville.com later today. I also encourage you to read the Charlottesville Tomorrow article. Did you read that article? I'll give a tease for this. I'll highlight this on tomorrow's show. Charlottesville Tomorrow did an article about public bathrooms at York Place. And the author of the article is a fantastic journalist named Aaron O'Hare. Well, Aaron O'Hare interviewed people about the public bathrooms in York Place. One of my favorite paragraphs from that article, and I'm trying to find it, is this one. CVS Pharmacy frequently opens its bathrooms to the public. But both John and Chris and another community member waiting for the bus who did not wish to give his last name say that the CVS bathrooms are frequently closed for major cleaning. The vandalism is really bad, John said, as Chris nodded in agreement. Vandalism is a problem in the CVS bathrooms, said an employee who asked to remain anonymous.
Which is why they're often closed.
People do all kinds of things in there, said the CVS employee. She said the worst, a few years ago, someone smeared blood all over the walls of the bathrooms in CVS. Then she says she hopes that people treat the York Place bathrooms with respect so that they won't have to constantly close them for cleaning.
I'm sure that'll happen.
That's foreshadowing. There's an article on a nonprofit news website, and the journalist interviewed an employee of CVS who asked to remain anonymous. And this employee of CVS said, "Our bathrooms are not even public. They're for customers only."
Yeah.
Still, the public comes in and uses them. And they do God-forsaken things in our bathrooms that she would not even name. And one of the worst scenarios was someone went into the bathroom and took human blood and rubbed it all over the walls. Is that not what's foreshadowing to come to York Place? When bathrooms that are tiny in a narrow hallway will be branded and marketed for the community to use at their leisure?
I mean, it doesn't take a genius to put a few numbers together and figure out what's going to happen. I mean, we've got the Haven just off the downtown mall that regularly takes in and pushes back out houseless people, and a lot of them end up hanging out either in the parks around the mall or on the actual mall, and they're gonna use any bathrooms that are available.
My favorite was the positive quote from the Charlottesville Tomorrow article was from the owner of Vu Noodles on Water Street. That's the old the creperie spot.
Is that where they are now?
I believe that's where they are now. Yeah, I think that's where she is. She said, "Let's do the public bathrooms." You know who was not interviewed? Any of the merchants that have their business in York Place next to the public bathrooms.
Right.
I wonder why that was.
Yeah.
All right. I'll save the Boyd Tinsley news for tomorrow. I want to close on the downtown mall story. I ask you, the viewer and listener, this question. Does the location of murder, where murder happens, the location where a murder takes place, determine the level of outrage and outreach from the community? I think if we were all honest with ourselves, we would say the answer is yes. A
Yeah.
murder on the downtown mall will create more community outrage and then community outreach than a murder that happens in a historically high crime area.
Yeah, there's no doubt.
No doubt about that. Second question I asked you here. Does the murder that happened on the downtown mall, does it yield the following cause and effects? Effect one, private businesses will have to hire private security to profile customers who come in their door, profiling them through the clothes that they wear, through stop and frisk methodologies, and through utilizing language like no gang colors, no do-rags, and no hats and baggy shirts allowed. I think that's going to happen.
I would think that it might take.
I wouldn't be surprised if we see it this weekend. Third question I'm going to ask you. If the community is outraged enough that they insist upon additional safety mechanisms in downtown Charlottesville, will those additional safety mechanisms that cost money erode the very slim profit the small business owner is earning in this post-COVID world? Private security is not cheap. Additional cameras are not cheap. More staff to keep problems from happening is not cheap. This costs money. Will that erode the slim profit margins that downtown merchants have? I have more questions for you. If these additional safety mechanisms are put into play, private security, cameras, dress code, will that further gentrify the customer base that comes to downtown Charlottesville, making it even whiter and wealthier than it already is? It's a question for you. I got another question for you. Will we see food and beverage and lodging tax revenue diminish because of safety fears? And if we see food and lodging tax revenue, food and beverage lodging tax revenue diminish, will the city of Charlottesville have to increase the taxes on real estate to make up the revenue that was lost from food and beverage and lodging? And if the city increases the taxes on real estate, will that further make the city white and rich and homogeneous?
Good questions.
Another question for you. As the city looks for additional tax revenue because food and beverage and lodging are flatline, will those additional tax revenue sources be commercial real estate? And if the taxes on commercial real estate are increased because of the safety concerns associated with nightlife on the mall, will the businesses that can afford the additional real estate commercial tax overhead be big box brands like Chipotle and Sheetz and Raising Cane's and Starbucks and Chick-fil-A, instead of the Greenskeeper, Little John's, Michael's Bistro, Poe's Public House, St. Martin's, 3, Eddie's Tavern, and beloved local businesses? That, my friends, from my standpoint, is the undefeated, invisible hand of capitalism. There's a saying in sports, and I'm going to close with this. There's a saying in professional sports. You know who the only undefeated person is? The only undefeated team in professional sports is, Judah? Who's the only undefeated team The only undefeated individual in professional sports, regardless of the sport.
The one who doesn't play?
No,
I don't know.
it's not that one. Who is it, viewers and listeners? Who is the only undefeated team, the only undefeated individual, the only undefeated entity in professional sports? Who is it, viewers and listeners? Put it in the feed. You know what the answer is? Father Time. Father Time. You know who beats Tom Brady? It's not Aaron Donald. It's not Aaron Rodgers. You know who beats Tom Brady? It's not Bill Belichick or Pete Carroll, the Atlanta Falcons, the Chicago Bears, the Kansas City Chiefs, or Patrick Mahomes. It's Father Time. It's Tom Brady, his talents eroding because he gets older. You know who beat Michael Jordan? It wasn't Patrick Ewing or Hakeem Olajuwon or Charles Barkley or Clyde Drexler. It was the fact that Michael Jordan got old. You know who beat Roger Federer? Roger Federer got old. Age beat Roger Federer. Father Time. You know who beats small business owners? You know who beats diversity? You know who beats small business development? The invisible hand of capitalism. And for every aspect of community outreach we can do, economic development, teach children from impoverished and marginalized neighborhoods about science, technology, engineering, and math. Invisible hand of capitalism is undefeated. It's undefeated, folks. Just like Father Time is undefeated in professional sports. That's the Wednesday edition of the I Love CVille show. We went 90 minutes and my voice is at maybe 70%. I want to give props to Judah Wickower for contributing today's program. I sound like a late night phone sex operator. Hello, Judah. What are you wearing today? What are you doing later?
I'm glad somebody knows what they sound like.
Thank you for joining us, guys. Take care.